Chapter 434. The Ruins of an Old Castle 2. Huff, huff. A beautiful woman was wandering through the dark mountains. Her true identity was Go Chan, who had possessed the body of Wei So-yun, the youngest disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader. With clothes stained with blood, covered in wounds and drenched in sweat from exhaustion, he looked around as if searching for something. No. Damn it, they said it would be on the mountain opposite the highest peak after going southwest for about 10 li without stopping. But where the hell is it? Despite being injured, Go Chan had used internal energy all the way here without rest and was now in no condition to move, his stamina completely depleted. Even though it was a possessed body, it still needed recovery to keep moving. Finally, after looking around, Go Chan entered a densely vegetated area that was inconspicuous and began to circulate his chi. Whoosh. As the cold energy coursed through his entire body, Go Chan inwardly clicked his tongue. How strange. He had heard of masters who could handle cold energy among the experts in the North Sea, a place outside the world where it was cold and snow-covered all 4 seasons. But how could a human body possess this level of cold energy? He had heard that his master, Mok Jaeongun, had helped dissipate the cold energy to prevent it from rampaging, but even without actively circulating chi, the cold energy was gradually increasing. How peculiar. This didn't seem like an issue with the physical body. It appeared to be related to the original spirit body that had fallen into a coma-like state when he possessed it. Just as he was pondering this oddity, Russell. Go Chan tensed up and stopped his chi circulation and breathing at the sound of footsteps. He was on edge, wondering if it was an ally or an enemy. At that moment, someone suddenly burst through the foliage in front of him. Wah. Ak. Even though his current body was exceptional, Go Chan had spent more time as a weakling in his past. Startled, he unconsciously fell on his backside while throwing a punch. Thud. White frost rose from Go Chan's punch, but the figure who had jumped out in front of him quickly twisted to the side, avoiding it. The energy from the punch froze the vegetation it touched. Crack. The figure looked at the frozen vegetation with disbelief, then touched it. The vegetation cracked and broke. At this, the figure clicked their tongue and said, "What's this? That body is quite powerful, isn't it? Shit. I thought my heart was going to stop." Recognizing the figure, Go Chan let out a sigh of relief and lowered his hand, still tinged with cold energy. The one who had suddenly appeared and startled him was none other than Seo Hyen, the leader of the 4 peaks, a member of the 5 peaks under Jang Nungike, the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader. More precisely, it was Gyu Soha, one of Mok Jaeongun's ghost servants who had possessed Seo Hyen's body. Gyu Soha grinned and said, "Were you scared? Were you scared? See, companion Soha, isn't your joke going too far? Oh, sorry. It was just funny seeing you all scared and hiding." At Gyu Soha's response, Go Chan clicked his tongue. Every time he saw this one, he felt that despite being a wandering ghost for a long time, their mental age didn't seem very high. "So you scared me in the middle of all this? What if I had accidentally hit you with my energy? Hey." At that moment, Gyu Soha approached Go Chan. Wondering what was going on, Go Chan found Gyu Soha pinching his cheeks and saying, "Want to switch bodies?" At these words, Go Chan sighed. Gyu Soha was always desperate to switch to any pretty body they saw. As Chang Ryong had said, this one was definitely not a man. If by any chance they were a man, then they must be per. "You look like you really hate the idea. If you don't like it, forget it. Tifich. It's a body we'll have to return anyway. If we aimed for this, the master would be very angry." That would be troublesome. Then let's hurry. If they notice that the one they recaptured is a fake with a human skin mask, they'll track us down to get the real one back. You don't need to worry about that. Are you too tired to sense the chi? Chi. Puzzled by Gyu Soha's words, Go Chan released his suppressed aura and focused on sensing chi. He could feel the energy of hundreds of people not far away. They were all masters. It was enough force to engage in battle if necessary. To send such a force just to rescue someone like me, a mere former assassin. Go Chan was deeply moved. What had started with the ill fate at the Yun Moksword Manor had led to this, being cared for like a right-hand man. It truly touched his heart. Because of this, Go Chan felt he should be even more loyal to Mok Jaeongun. Seeing Go Chan's reaction, Gyu Soha scratched their head. "Make sure to protect that body at all costs. It seemed like Go Chan was misunderstanding something. But since it didn't seem to be a negative misunderstanding, it might be better to leave it be. No need to break his sense of gratitude after all. Rumble. Whoosh. The demonic beast Humwen, flapping its torn wings, crashed to the ground. It tried to reduce its falling speed by fluttering its one remaining wing, but due to its massive size, the speed didn't decrease easily. Damn it. It ba. Mok Jiongun's subordinates, tightly gripping Humwen's wing feathers and claws, couldn't do anything in this situation either. Falling from a height higher than the clouds, it seemed the only option was to jump off at some point. As Humwen was nearing the ground. Whoosh. Huh. At that moment they felt Humwen's falling speed gradually slowing down. As the falling speed decreased rather than accelerating, everyone was puzzled. Looking down, they saw Mok Jiongun, who had somehow already landed on the ground, raising both hands. Ah. My lord. The expressions of those who had been pale with fear brightened. Meanwhile, the great guardian 8 poison snake staff Gyeongso and the right guardian Ma Arehyun couldn't help but marvel at Mok Jiongun's profound inner energy. Ho ho. What impossible internal energy. To still have energy left. Unlike themselves, who had been barely able to fend off the attacks of the Imimanjiang due to the restricted movement at an altitude higher than the clouds, Mok Jiongun had single-handedly killed all the Imimanjiang with his formless swords. Yet he still had energy to spare in his true chi, seeming even more powerful than during the internal war of the Heaven and Earth Society. It's utterly impossible to catch up. Ma Arehyun, who had inwardly aimed to match Mok Jiongun's martial prowess, felt that this was so inhuman that he couldn't even think of catching up. Thanks to Mok Jiongun reducing their falling speed with his profound true chi, they were able to safely land on the ground. However, they couldn't be entirely happy. This was because the wings of the demonic beast Humwen, their means of transportation, had been torn, making it difficult to move through the air again. It would take some time for this to heal. TSK, this reminds me of the Shaolin Temple incident. At Seop Chun's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Back then, Humwen's wings had been injured by the attack of the Shaolin demon subduing monks, and they had to move on the ground until it healed. The situation was the same this time. The only difference was that during the Shaolin incident, they were in a position to avoid pursuit, while this time, they were in the opposite situation of having to pursue and catch up. Therefore, having a problem with their fastest mode of transportation meant a significant setback in their pursuit. Moreover, my lord, I don't think this will end with just one attempt. The great guardian Gyeongso spoke with a voice of concern. Having worked closely with the secret society for a long time, he knew their habits well. They moved secretly, but once they were determined, they would pressure their target until they achieved their goal. Therefore, they would continue to try to prevent Mok Jiongun from heading to the northern part of Shaanxi province. The great guardian's words are correct. They'll probably try to tie us down. My lord, let us be the bait instead. At that moment, Mong Muyak offered an opinion. Seop Chun asked with puzzlement. Becoming bait? You don't mean. Exactly what I said. We should split into 2 groups to draw the enemy's attention. At Mong Muyak's words, Seop Chun swallowed dryly, unable to speak. It was certainly a good strategy. The only problem was that those who split up to draw the enemy's attention would have to take on a greater risk, but still. So who's going to be the bait? After a moment of hesitation, Seop Chun asked directly. Mong Muyak looked at Seop Chun intently. You want me to be the bait alone? Why don't you just perform a ritual to send me to my death? Not alone, but you and me. And it would be good if one of the guardians here could join us. What? Anyway, we 2 are the weakest among us. It's better to have the guardians stay by the Lord's side. Ugh. It made strategic sense, so he couldn't refute it. The guardians also seemed to agree with Mong Muyak's opinion, nodding their heads in agreement to some extent. Since they were bound from moving through the air anyway, they had no choice but to respond strategically if they wanted to hurry. However, Mok Jiongun's thoughts were different. The strategy of using them as bait wasn't bad, but if they did that, those who became bait would essentially have to be prepared to die. In the past, these people would have been mere chess pieces to Mok Jiongun. Literally, if they had no use value, they were cards he could discard at any time. But now things had to be different. As Chong Ryong had advised, to become a great master leading numerous people, he had to abandon the mindset of considering someone as a card that could be discarded at any time. Unless it was truly the worst situation with no way out, sacrificing allies would be a bad move for the future. So Mok Jae-un decided. No. All of you return as you are. What? Everyone couldn't hide their bewilderment at this unexpected decision. They were prepared to sacrifice themselves for their lord, even if it meant losing their lives as bait. My lord. How can you say that? My lord, you're no longer alone. How can you try to bear everything by yourself? Return. However, Mok Jae-un's will was firm. He judged that moving alone would be more efficient and result in no sacrifices than using them as bait. But right at that moment, there's no need to go to such lengths when there's a very safe and comfortable way to go. Everyone's gaze turned towards the source of the voice they heard from somewhere. The owner of the voice was none other than Chun Chu, the highest-ranking executive of the secret society. Unlike the others who had been traveling in a spacious carriage, she was tied to one of the demonic beast Humwen's ankle claws. A woman as alluring and beautiful as her might have been tempting, but Mok Jae-un considered no one as a romantic interest except for one person, so he had treated her properly as a prisoner. What do you mean by that? When Seop Chun asked her, Chun Chu snorted and said, Step aside, youngster. Again. As Seop Chun was about to draw his Jeep Mu sword in anger, Mong Muyak hurriedly stopped him. Then Mok Jae-un spoke in a disinterested voice. What do you want? At his question, Chun Chu smiled sweetly and said, You know what I want. She stared intently at Mok Jae-un and stuck out her tongue, licking her upper lip in a seductive manner. Seeing this, Seop Chun clicked his tongue. Crazy woman. They had wrapped her entire body in ropes except for her head to tie her to the demonic beast Humwen's claw pillar, and it was rather impressive that she was trying to seduce in such a state. 6 days later. In a bamboo forest not far from the ruins of an old castle in the northern part of Shaanxi province. In the middle of a bamboo forest covering dozens of jang, a man wearing a bamboo hat was wiping blood off his sword blade while breathing heavily. Wipe, wipe. Dozens of corpses were scattered around the man. Each one had lost their life to a single sword strike. One man who hadn't yet breathed his last opened his mouth with difficulty. Is that what you're doing? So it is betrayal, after all. That person will never. Thud. Before he could finish speaking, the man in the bamboo hat thrust his sword into the man's head. The man couldn't finish his words and breathed his last. Looking down at the man, the bamboo-hatted figure shook his head slightly and muttered. Oh, it's for that person. Just as the man was about to sheath his sword after shaking off the blood from its tip, the man stopped and scanned his surroundings. Then, drip, drip, drip. Suddenly, blood from the dead bodies began to flow rapidly and start pooling. Even though dozens of people had died, this was a bamboo field, so the blood should have seeped into the ground, but it was a truly strange phenomenon. The bamboo-hatted man hurriedly tried to leave the area. Then blood began to flow even from the surrounding bamboo, staining the area red. As an ominous spiritual energy, chilling to the extreme, filled the surroundings, the bamboo-hatted man could be certain of what this was. Ghost Intent Domain. This was a domain created by the spiritual energy of a high-ranking spirit with strong resentment. Chapter 435. The Ruins of an Old Castle 3. The ruins of an old castle. You know where that is, Ryu Sowol. A place where those who revered martial arts gathered to form a high castle. The foundation where the legends of the old martial arts world lived and breathed. Cough cough. Indeed, you know it better. So where is he? Don't think about deceiving me. If you do, you'll accompany this seat to the depths of hell. At Chong Ryong's threat, the Heaven and Earth Society leader coughed up blood, then gave a bitter smile and said, Oh, if that's what you want as a member of the Heaven Vein, I have no reason to refuse. Cough cough. But have you ever thought that the world we're living in now might be more hellish? I seem to have said something unnecessary. This Blade. Ghost Blade reported that he's waiting in a bamboo forest not far from the ruins of the old castle. Bamboo forest? You mean a bamboo grove? That's right. If you take this on my belt, he'll know I sent you. Being unable to move due to being restrained by Chong Ryong's spiritual energy, he gestured with his eyes towards the belt at his waist. The society leader's token was attached to the belt. Seeing this, Chong Ryong suddenly recalled what Poison King Baeksaha had told Mok Jaeungun when she was inside the wooden doll. He had said that while competing with him he had asked to deliver that token to the society leader. Is that the medium through which the society leader can move Ghost Blade? As Chong Ryong had reached the extreme of her rank and could directly affect matter with her spirit body, she easily collected his token. After collecting it she asked, "But there's something I don't understand." Cough cough. "What is it?" "About Ghost Blade. He obtained the forbidden technique, so why is he staying there instead of sending it to you?" At her question striking the core of the matter, the Heaven and Earth Society leader remained silent with a strange expression for a moment before speaking. "That's 7 days later. Found it. As a spirit body she could freely traverse the sky and didn't need to eat or sleep, so she was able to reach the northern part of Shaanxi province in just 7 days. If she could have fully exerted her spiritual power during the day as well, she would have arrived even faster. Even though she had reached the extreme of her rank, prolonged exposure to the sun, the peak of yang energy, would inevitably weaken her spirit body composed purely of yin energy, no matter how powerful she was. "What are those?" Unexpectedly, the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade was fighting with dozens of martial artists. However, seeing him, Chong Ryong couldn't help but be inwardly surprised. She knew he was one of the 8 stars, the highest masters in the current martial arts world, and that he belonged to the highest rank of the secret society, but this was unexpected. Swoosh. Swoosh. He was killing enemies with a single strike, aiming only for their vital points with minimal movement. There wasn't a single unnecessary or wasted motion. As long as no variables arose from the enemy's combined attacks, he efficiently killed most of them with a single sword strike. But what impressed Chong Ryong was that this sword technique had not a shred of defense. It consisted only of offense. It was a sword technique that risked one's own life to ensure the enemy's death, or rather annihilation. A sword technique that disregards one's own safety. In a sense, he had mastered a truly dangerous sword technique. However, he was overcoming this single weakness in one way. He's a monster. He deflected all the enemy's fatal attacks with his sword. This was the first time she had seen such a perfect and extreme level of the pear blossom grafting technique. Now she understood why this person was called Ghost Blade, Ghost Blade. But that wasn't what was important. Swoosh. As the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade killed the last enemy, Chong Ryong spread her ghost intent domain, the blood boundary. The conditions were favorable. Thanks to the tall bamboo forest, the surroundings were dark, and the area was overflowing with death energy from dozens of people meeting their end. Therefore, by properly utilizing these conditions, she could construct an even more powerful ghost intent domain. Her spiritual power interlocked with the death energy of the surroundings, stained everything with blood, and soon the entire area was filled with nothing but a blood-red color. The reason she was binding him like this, despite having brought the society leader's token that could move Ghost Blade, was due to what the society leader had said. It seems some problem occurred with him in the process of approaching the forbidden technique. A problem occurred? I don't know why, but I received periodic letters from him with the same content. The same content. That's right. What was it? Just this. I've gotten closer to the source of the forbidden technique. What? Exactly as I said. There were repeated reports stating that he had gotten closer to the source of the forbidden technique. How many times? 12 times. The Heaven and Earth Society leader said that Ghost Blade had sent secret messages with the same content a total of 12 times, almost every 5 days. Because there were eyes from the secret society monitoring, retrieving secret messages usually happened once a month, but as the Elder Council began to move in earnest, they were forced to retrieve them in the second month. When the 2 months' worth of secret messages retrieved in this way contained the same report at 5-day intervals, the Heaven and Earth Society leader couldn't help but find it strange. Originally, I planned to go there myself once internal matters of the society were settled, but now it seems you, Ryu So-wol, must uncover the secret of these repetitive messages. Recalling those words of the society leader, Chong Ryong came to one conclusion. Although she didn't know what the secret was, if Ghost Blade had betrayed the society leader or if some problem had occurred with him personally that would cause them to lose him, they wouldn't be able to find out anything. So the priority was to subdue him somehow. With this in mind, she opened the blood boundary and moved the blood. Creep. Countless blood thorns sprouted from within the bloodied area. These sprouted blood thorns all rushed towards the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The bamboo-hatted man drew the sword he had half-sheathed against the incoming thorns. A flash of sword light flowed out like lightning, and in an instant the red blood thorns covering the bamboo-hatted man split and melted back into blood. Yes, you should at least manage that much. Her rank was incomparable to before. While coming here without rest, her anger that had been burning like fire had somewhat calmed down, so her spiritual power wasn't maximized to the extent she had shown at the Heaven and Earth Society. But in her normal state she had become powerful enough to face at least one of the 7 heavens. Splash. In an instant, 2 hands emerged from the blood and grabbed the bamboo-hatted man's ankles, pulling him. This caused the bamboo-hatted man to lose his balance and start falling backward. At that moment, spears made of blood shot out towards the bamboo-hatted man's hands and thighs. However, thud, pat. The bamboo-hatted man who was about to fall, arched his back, thrust his sword into the ground, and using it as a support, flipped his body while pushing off with his sword-holding hand to lift himself up. As the bamboo-hatted man swung his sword-formed fingers in that state, swoosh swoosh swoosh. Sharp sword energy flowed out, cutting through the spears she had created from blood. The bamboo-hatted man made a gesture of pulling with his hand, and the sword stuck in the ground flew out and was drawn into his hand. Tap. Gripping the sword, the bamboo-hatted man immediately unleashed sword energy in all directions. Swoosh 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 swoosh. The blue sword energy that flew out split the blood staining the surroundings, threatening to destroy the blood boundary. As it split for a moment part of the real world, the bamboo forest, was briefly revealed instead of the blood boundary, but soon the blood covered it again. Is this not enough? However, having confirmed that the world created by spiritual power could be dispelled by strong true chi, the bamboo-hatted man flew towards one area covered in blood. Rumble. The size of the sword energy emanating from his sword grew to nearly 5 jang. But it didn't end there. The sword energy that had grown so large began to condense, becoming an even deeper blue. That won't do. Realizing that he was trying to forcibly cut through the blood boundary by concentrating his energy to the maximum, Chong Ryong then, swoosh, emerged from the blood and manifested. Blood clung to the long pipe in Chong Ryong's hand, forming the shape of a sword. She gathered spiritual power infused with resentment into the blood-formed sword, and that energy was comparable to the condensed sword energy of the bamboo-hatted man. Just as the sword made of spiritual power and the condensed sword energy were about to clash. Hup. Suddenly, the bamboo-hatted man forcibly stopped swinging his sword. If one simply tries to forcibly stop while moving their body vigorously, the residual force of that action would directly impact oneself, causing strain on the body. Let alone in this situation where he had raised his energy to the point of condensing sword energy, forcibly stopping it would crack, crack. Along with the sound of muscles twisting in the bamboo-hatted man's body, the hand holding the sword began to shake violently. The palm gripping the sword hilt was torn, causing blood to flow. Chong Ryong couldn't understand his behavior. What on earth was his intention? So, swoosh. Chong Ryong likewise stopped swinging the blood sword made of spiritual power. Unlike him who had a physical body, she, being a spirit body, didn't experience strain from stopping the force she had exerted. Chong Ryong, who had stopped the blood sword right in front of the bamboo-hatted man's neck, asked with puzzlement, "Why did you stop your sword?" At her question, the bamboo-hatted man, who had been silent for a moment, finally spoke. "So you really were freed? What? For your rank as a vengeful spirit to be this high in just a mere 100 years, was it your own will that freed you rather than contact with an avatar?" At the bamboo-hatted man's words, Chong Ryong's expression hardened. The Ghost Blade she knew was supposed to be a highest-ranking executive of the secret society, but for some reason he had aligned his intentions with the Heaven and Earth Society leader. But judging from the way this person was speaking to her now, it seemed as if he knew something. "Who are you? What exactly do you know about this seat?" Having just been freed from the seal, the fact that you, who should be burning with resentment, came all the way here means you must have known that person is still alive and well, and that there's been a setback in the society leader's plans. At his words, Chong Ryong's eyes sharpened. She had thought that even if she went a bit further, It would only be related to the death of Jang Muno, Mok Jaeungun's grandfather and the society leader, but it seemed that wasn't the case. To show this level of insight, being able to grasp the situation to this extent with just simple information, one would need to know a lot. Eventually, the corners of Chong Ryong's mouth lifted. It seems I'll learn a lot if I make you open your mouth. Choose whether it would be better for me to force it open or for you to open it yourself. Swoosh. Chong Ryong showed him the token she had received from the society leader. Seeing this, the bamboo-hatted man, presumed to be Ghost Blade, maintained silence for a moment. Then, letting out a faint sigh, he said, "The fact that you brought that means you either received it willingly from him or forcibly took it. If it were the latter, how do you think I would have known your location? Even that person, now that he's close to the traces of the forbidden technique, finding this place is no longer difficult." The bamboo-hatted man gestured with his chin towards the corpses scattered on the ground. The fact that these people had come here meant that even the secret society had finally discovered traces of the forbidden technique. Humph. Then if I say I know about you repeatedly sending the same secret message, would you think it's the former? Repeatedly sending the same secret message? What do you mean? The bamboo-hatted man frowned, asking in a tone of incomprehension. At this, Chong Ryong said, "They say you kept sending secret messages repeatedly saying you've gotten closer to the traces of the forbidden technique. This should be enough. Why are you acting like this?" As the bamboo-hatted man showed signs of bewilderment, Chong Ryong couldn't hide her puzzlement. The man was quietly repeating something and it sounded like he was saying, "It can't be. Why on earth is he acting like this?" At that moment, woong woong woong. Chong Ryong looked around with surprised eyes. This was because she was still maintaining the ghost intent domain, the blood boundary, but she could see the surrounding spaces suddenly bending. Wondering what this phenomenon was, eventually, crack 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 crack. Surprisingly, beyond the space distorting, her blood boundary was forcibly shattered. She had prided herself on how difficult it would be to break easily due to her strengthened spiritual power, but what on earth was happening? Even the bamboo forest revealed after the blood boundary broke was bending. What is this? As she was puzzled, the bamboo-hatted man, presumed to be Ghost Blade, spoke. Though it looks like a simple bamboo forest, this entire bamboo grove is one big formation. You're saying this is a formation? Not just a simple formation. If you look at the positions where the bamboo is planted, it's composed of highly advanced formation patterns, not just one but hundreds concentrated together. It's a formation that you can neither enter nor exit unless certain conditions are met. Don't tell me this is. Yes, this formation made up of the bamboo forest is the entrance leading to the traces of the forbidden technique. At that very moment, crack crack crack, the space of the bamboo forest that had been bending completely twisted into a vortex shape, and then Chong Ryong and the bamboo-hatted man were sucked into it. Swoosh. And the moment the vortex's distortion ended and the space returned to normal, the bamboo-hatted man was suddenly standing alone in the middle of the bamboo forest. As a gentle breeze blew, causing the bamboo to sway and its leaves to flutter and fall, the bamboo-hatted man, hit by this, quickly scanned the arrangement of the surrounding bamboo and muttered softly, "I finally found it. I should send a secret message." Chapter 436. The Ruins of an Old Castle 4. Squeak. It's too dizzying. And the pain feels like her spirit body is being burned. Where on earth is this place? As Chong Ryong looked around, she noticed something strange. She was trapped in a jade window made of rare silver wood. Because of this, due to the silver wood's power to suppress resentment, she couldn't move properly and the pain persisted. Ugh. Even while suffering, Chong Ryong looked around to determine exactly where she was. But she realized a new fact that she hadn't noticed before, being too focused on the silver wood jade window. Could it be? Everything around her was enormous. From a huge inkstone to brushes, numerous medicine jars and large books. All of these were larger than herself. It might have been confusing, but due to the giant surroundings she could recognize one fact. That is, have I shrunk? It seemed similar to when she was sealed in the wooden doll of mortals. The difference was that while the wooden doll just confined her, this was almost like torture. The purifying power of silver would not only weaken resentment but could ultimately extinguish it. This could be considered the worst crisis for her. Yo! Judging that she couldn't stay trapped here, Chong Ryong, though in pain, tried to raise her spiritual power to break the silver wood. Even if her body had shrunk, there was no way that she, a vengeful spirit who had reached the extreme of her rank, couldn't destroy this level of silver wood. Rumble. Crack crack crack. Take it. Chong Ryong, who had been raising her spiritual power, had to stop due to pain that felt like her entire spirit body was being torn apart. Staggering in agony, Chong Ryong couldn't understand. It might be understandable for a low-ranking vengeful spirit, but she had already reached a rank no different from high-level Imi Manjiang. So why couldn't she release her spiritual power? As she wondered about this, she suddenly discovered something and her eyes widened. It was because talismans forming a formation were attached to the bottom of the silver wood jade window, that is, on the desk centered around her. But there was something strange about these talismans. She had seen many talismans while being with Mok Jayongun. However, these talismans had even more complex phrases and patterns engraved on them than those. Perhaps because of this, even the spiritual power emanating from the talismans themselves was extraordinary. All of this seemed to be organically connected with the silver wood, preventing her from recklessly releasing her spiritual power. Damn it. Chong Ryong held her throbbing head and recalled what had happened earlier. The space of the bamboo forest had twisted like a vortex and she had been sucked into it. Crack. Eventually, her vision brightened and her surroundings changed to a wide grassland covered in green. Faced with this sudden miraculous event, Chong Ryong was momentarily at a loss for words. Where on earth is this place? No matter how advanced the formation techniques have become, how could such a wide grassland be hidden inside a bamboo forest? As Chong Ryong was puzzled, something caught her eye. It was a thatched cottage in the middle of the grassland. Oh my. At that moment, the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade showed a somewhat bewildered expression. So she asked, "Why? Is this not the place?" "This is certainly it." "Then why are you reacting like that?" "This déjà vu is a first." Déjà vu? Déjà vu. It's a phenomenon where a situation or environment that one has never experienced before feels familiar, as if it's something one has gone through before. At the bamboo-hatted man's words, she too felt something strange. Come to think of it, this mortal was said to have sent the same secret message 12 times. As if each time was the first time sending it. Could it be? Chong Ryong looked at the bamboo-hatted man with widened eyes and opened her mouth. You perhaps. This is quite interesting. Chong Ryong turned her head in surprise at the voice coming from somewhere. How could she, with her extremely heightened spiritual sense, not have noticed someone approaching this close? 10 steps behind her was someone leaning on a silver cane with a jade ring. That someone was none other than a beautiful woman. She had long blue-black hair, distinct eyebrows, round eyes with slightly upturned corners that reminded one of a cat. What is this? Chong Ryong's eyes filled with wariness. How could she not have noticed such a being approaching? The energy emanating from the woman was so vast it was impossible to measure. In terms of energy alone, she even surpassed the sentient beings. How could such a being? Swoosh. At that moment, the blue-black-haired woman muttered something and extended her cane. In that instant, Chong Ryong couldn't hide her bewilderment. She felt her spirit body stiffening like stone. Then, whoosh. At that moment, the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade moved his body so quickly it caused spatial distortion. In an instant, he closed the distance to the woman and tried to cut off the wrist of the hand holding the cane. However, clang. The bamboo-hatted man's pupils shook. This was because the woman, without moving a single step, caught his sword barehanded, even though he had swung it with the power of one of the 8 stars, considering the opponent strong even if she hadn't raised her energy. Feeling that this wouldn't do, the bamboo-hatted man hurriedly tried to raise his strong energy, but tremble, crack, kook. The tip of the sword blade caught by the woman trembled, then the trembling spread to the entire sword, and then as if the wound on his already torn palm had widened further, blood burst out. This wasn't the end. Along with the blood bursting, the bamboo-hatted man's body was pushed back, for as much as 10 steps. Rustle, 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 rustle. If he hadn't applied true chi to his Yangshan point, he would have been pushed back even further. Centered on the soles of the bamboo-hatted man's feet where he had stopped, the surrounding grass on the ground rotted and then crumbled. What is this? The bamboo-hatted man's eyes narrowed. The moment he felt energy climbing up his palm, he thought he should let go of the sword hilt. Not stopping there, he felt he should unconditionally release the energy that had penetrated his body, so he sent it out through his Yangshan point. If he hadn't done so, he would have been injured internally by this strange energy. The bamboo-hatted man raised his head and looked at the blue-black-haired woman holding his sword blade. Again. As déjà vu struck, the bamboo-hatted man frowned. Then the blue-black-haired woman raised the corner of her mouth and spoke. Isn't it fascinating how your body remembers? What are you talking about? Why are you denying it? Even if your mind doesn't, it's natural for your body to remember if you've experienced this. Remember, with the body? Then indeed. The bamboo-hatted man's gaze sharpened. He had felt something strange due to the words he heard from Chong Ryong and the peculiar déjà vu. But that strangeness became certain because of what this woman was saying. It seemed that his memory was not intact. Convinced of this, the bamboo-hatted man spoke. Is this the 13th time? At his question, a glint appeared in the blue-black-haired woman's eyes. Have you perhaps regained your memory? What have you done to me? One of the woman's eyebrows raised. Then, swoosh. The woman's figure blurred and suddenly appeared behind the bamboo-hatted man who had been pushed back. The woman who appeared behind the bamboo-hatted man instantly used the grappling hand technique with her left hand, twisting his arm behind his back and pushing him forward. Thud. The bamboo-hatted man's expression contorted. What on earth is happening? No matter how swift the woman's movements were and how impressive the grappling hand technique was, it was impossible for him to be overpowered so helplessly. Just who is this woman? The blue-black-haired woman's hand touched the back of the bamboo-hatted man's head. Sensing a cold energy penetrating the moment her hand touched, the bamboo-hatted man hurriedly tried to raise his internal energy. However, my internal energy isn't gathering. Strangely, strength doesn't easily come. Come to think of it, he had felt something was off earlier, but the internal energy in his body wasn't circulating properly according to his will and was moving on its own. It's not undone. What? You still don't remember, so how did you know the number of times you've been here? At her question, the bamboo-hatted man kept his mouth shut. He thought it was more important to focus his mind on correcting his inner energy that was running wild rather than answering something. Then the blue-black-haired woman sneered. Kikik. You're doing unnecessary things. No one can exert their own power here, child. Of course, even if you could exert your power, it wouldn't make much difference. What have you done to me? Well, what did I do? You're already guessing, aren't you? Did you make me lose my memory of coming here? Hoo. The woman laughed softly at this question. It meant affirmation. At this, the bamboo-hatted man became quiet. After learning the answer to his question, he seemed to become even more calm, considering how to break through this situation. Then the bamboo-hatted man spoke in a cool voice. I didn't enter this place to threaten you. You came to obtain the forbidden technique that can unite the soul and spirit. The bamboo-hatted man was at a loss for words. He had tried to take the approach of persuading her, but with this answer it became certain. Although he couldn't remember, he had clearly taken this approach before. And he must have failed. Why are you silent? If you know that and I have no memory of it, it means persuasion is meaningless, right? You understand well. At her answer, the bamboo-hatted man inwardly became confused. Based on the situation so far, a few things had become clear. That he couldn't obtain what he wanted through persuasion, and fortunately or unfortunately for some unknown intention, she could kill him but only made him lose his memory and sent him out of the formation. Why? For her too, the continued repetition would lead to annoyance. So why does she keep repeating this? As he wondered, he heard the woman muttering. If it weren't for the promise with that person, it would be easier to just kill you and be done with it. Tiske. What are you saying? Grip. Hup. At that moment, the woman strongly gripped the back of the bamboo-hatted man's head. Then she said, I don't know why all your memories aren't erased, you mutant. Thanks to you, I'm not bored. Come again. At that moment, the bamboo-hatted man's head fell forward and he lost consciousness. The woman, gripping the back of his collar, lifted the bamboo-hatted man up, then repeatedly struck the ground with her cane while softly chanting what seemed to be a spell. Then, crack. Part of the space began to distort as if swirling. The woman then pushed the bamboo-hatted man, whom she was holding by the collar, into the distorted space. As the bamboo-hatted man's figure disappeared, the distorted space returned to normal. Move. Move. Seeing this, Chong Ryong tried to somehow raise her spiritual power to move her body. However, her spirit body, once stiffened like stone, didn't budge at all. She couldn't understand what was happening. Then, the blue-black-haired woman who had made the bamboo-hatted man disappear approached, raising the corner of her mouth in a sinister smile and said, "It's truly a good day. I promised not to kill," but there was no mention of not touching dead resentment to begin with. "What exactly are you?" She's a monster with immeasurable martial prowess and even strange techniques at her disposal. She had never heard of or seen such a being either in life or after death. As she was at a loss for what to do, the woman who had approached right in front of her spoke in an excited voice. "Even in the old days when I was outside, I had never seen such strong resentment. I didn't expect such luck to come my way." Rumble. Chong Ryong tried to somehow ignite the resentment within her to raise her spiritual power. The blue-black-haired woman approached her and casually lifted the chin of her spirit body, saying, "It's useless, child." Although she was in a threatened position, Chong Ryong, not one to be intimidated, retorted with a voice full of killing intent. "The child would be you, wouldn't it? You mortal." Kikik. Indeed, as expected of a high-ranking resentment, you're not easily intimidated. Given your rank, you must have been a vengeful spirit for quite a long time, so you might know of my prestige. Prestige? Ha. It's laughable that she's spouting such nonsense, overconfident in having restrained her, when she's just a mortal who won't even live 100 years. If you know this prestige, you could say you've lived in a similar era to me. Humph. Well then, let's hear how great this prestige of yours is. Wicked Granny. Chapter 437, Ghost Blade, 1. Wicked Granny. It was a title completely forgotten by the current martial arts world. For those who knew even a little about the old martial arts world, it was closer to a name of terror than one of greatness, and it could even be called an evil reputation. The evil among evils. Even for Chong Ryong, who had lived during the founding of the Heaven and Earth Society, the era before the day of great calamity was shrouded in mystery. Most things related to that era had been almost completely lost. However, despite this, she was from an older time than now, so she had heard some stories of the old martial arts world through oral tradition. One of these was about the Wicked Granny. She was known as an evil among evils who had already lived for hundreds of years even in the old martial arts world and had committed many evil deeds. Impossible. At first she denied this. Could that young woman really be the Wicked Granny? Although her not being aged could be explained by cases like Dam Bekha of the Nine Blood sect, Chong Ryong had heard that the Wicked Granny, an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, was dead. Nonsense. The Wicked Granny is dead. Oh, I thought it might be, but you really do know me? What exactly are you? I told you. I'm the Wicked Granny. Then the oral tradition must be wrong. Oral tradition? Didn't you experience that era yourself? If you're talking about the old martial arts world, let me tell you I didn't. But this much I'm sure of. What's that? The Wicked Granny died at the hands of the world's greatest martial artist. Is that how it was known? Yes. Well, that's not wrong. What? Hoo-hoo. This is good. You seem to know quite a lot, so I won't be bored if I keep you around to do various experiments. And with the Wicked Granny's outstretched hand, she lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, she was trapped in this jade window made of silver wood. Chong Ryong bit her lip hard. She needed to obtain the forbidden technique that could unite the soul and spirit to lure him and complete her revenge, but she couldn't believe the situation she was in. Is she really the Wicked Granny? If the identity of that woman who had captured her was truly the Wicked Granny, it meant she had been alive all this time, contrary to the oral tradition. It meant she had lived even longer than Dam Bekha of the Nine Blood sect. Squeak. Even in the midst of pain that felt like her spirit body was burning within the formation made of silver wood and talismans, she was dumbfounded. What kind of coincidence is this? To be entangled like this again, as if she had some connection to the old martial arts world. Grip. Chong Ryong clenched her fist and gritted her teeth. There was no time to waste like this. Time would continue to pass, and if she remained here, she would eventually end up as that Bai Yonghian wanted. Before that happens, she needs to either persuade that woman who calls herself the Wicked Granny or somehow escape from here. No matter how well made the formation of talismans on silver wood is, Like all formations, it can't be perfect. She needs to find the living gate. She stood up and looked around. First, she needed to memorize the talismans, then break the silver wood, and then pass through the living gate of the spell formation immediately. As she stood up, she couldn't help but wonder at the strange form inside this thatched cottage. In the middle of the cottage stood something like a thick pillar, with numerous joints on it, and countless phrases were engraved on them. As she stared at this, her eyes sparkled. Could that be the center of this place? It might be the medium connecting this hidden space within the bamboo forest. Come to think of it, since entering this place, it had been difficult to properly exert her spiritual power. It seemed there were many secrets to this formation. As she was carefully examining this, she suddenly discovered something attached to one of the walls. A scroll with a painting was hanging there. The scroll depicted what looked like the peach blossom spring, and it was the only thing that didn't fit with the other things in this thatched cottage. She soon turned her attention away from it and looked around for other potential clues. But then, thud, the door of the thatched cottage opened and the wicked granny came in. In the wicked granny's hands were what appeared to be medicinal herbs. Placing them on the table, she spoke with gleaming eyes. "Oh, you've regained consciousness already? What do you intend to do with me? Well, what do you think I'll do? Should I use you to experiment with new techniques, or since I've obtained a rare puh, should I try embedding it in an object like those demonic swords?" She seemed excited, like a child who had just gotten a new toy. Seeing her like this, Chong Ryong became more wary and after some consideration spoke. "You'll regret it if you keep this seat confined here." "Regret?" "Yes. If you don't release me right now, troublesome things will happen." At Chong Ryong's words, the wicked granny sneered. "Even if it's troublesome, what could be so troublesome?" "Kikik. People like that bamboo-hatted man from earlier will keep coming. Can you handle that?" "You mean people like that guy from earlier will come?" "Yes. Even that guy kept stubbornly coming back inside even after you erased his memory. What will you do if someone even more persistent appears?" Chong Ryong tried to persuade her somehow. For some unknown reason, she seemed to avoid killing living people. Judging by how she merely erased memories and sent them out instead of killing them. However, considering that she sent them out and had been living alone in such a place for hundreds of years, she probably wouldn't welcome someone visiting or bothering her. But, Kikik. It's the first time I've seen a vengeful spirit full of resentment use their head like this. Indeed, a high rank does strengthen one's sense of self. What? But you know what? It doesn't matter whether they come or not. The period of the promise is almost over. The period of the promise? It means this wearisome solitude is finally ending. Chong Ryong frowned. What on earth is she talking about? She had thought the wicked granny was here because she had voluntarily cut off her ties with the outside world. That's why she thought she erased the memories of those who entered here and sent them out. But is that not all there is to it? As she wondered, the wicked granny brought her face close and said with a grin, "It's regrettable that not everything went according to that person's arrangements, but I've kept my promise and paid enough for my karma, so I'll be going to that place soon. You vengeful spirit, just need to alleviate this body's boredom until then." Meanwhile, outside the bamboo forest, the bamboo-hatted man presumed to be Ghost Blade, who had come out of the bamboo forest, looked at his palm with an incomprehensible gaze. His palm was torn. What on earth is this mark? It wasn't in his memory, but he couldn't understand why there was a wound. For a wound like this to occur, it could only happen if one forcibly endured a power they couldn't handle while gripping a sword hilt. But he had no memory of anyone pushing him to this extent recently. In fact, he hadn't fought anyone on his way here. What is this? Come to think of it, when he thought about sending a secret message to the society leader, he had been gripped by a strange sense of déjà vu. As if this wasn't unfamiliar. Because of this, the bamboo-hatted man couldn't help but fall into deep thought while looking at his palm. His instincts were telling him. When he entered that bamboo forest made of highly advanced formation patterns, something he couldn't remember had happened. For some reason that memory had disappeared. Is it the effect of the formation? For whatever reason, it seemed he should refrain from hastily entering the bamboo forest until he figured this out. First, let's send the secret message. Just as the bamboo-hatted man was about to take a step, flinch. The bamboo-hatted man slowly turned his head at the oppressive feeling surrounding the area. There, a young man with white hair and white eyebrows, despite his unwrinkled young face, was walking towards him with his hands behind his back. Despite walking slowly, the moment the bamboo-hatted man saw him, his gaze changed. This is the worst. As he finally found this place. The moment he saw the white-haired and white-browed young man, the bamboo-hatted man instantly recognized who he was. Even within the secret society, there were beings who had served by the society leader's side for the longest time. Among them, there was a highest-ranking executive who was considered almost the best when it came to destroying something, and that was Destruction Emperor. Step, step. With each of his steps, the ground cracked and split. The aura flowing from him was extraordinary, like the majesty of an emperor encompassing everything. Destruction Emperor. As he opened his mouth, the white-haired and white-browed young man, or rather Destruction Emperor, also spoke. How strange. This command was given to me, yet why are you here? I can't say. You can't say. That's right. At the bamboo-hatted man's words, Destruction Emperor stopped 10 steps in front of him with an expressionless face. Then he spoke again. This is my leniency as a colleague who has served that person together for a long time. I'll ask again. Why are you here? I said I can't. Before he could finish speaking, Destruction Emperor had already extended his index finger towards him. Along with this, in the blink of an eye, an intense finger force flew accurately towards the bamboo-hatted man's face. The bamboo-hatted man hurriedly tilted his head back. Swoosh. The finger force pierced through the front of the bamboo hat and passed by. But that wasn't the end. Shing. The bamboo-hatted man who had drawn his sword, flew his body backward and swung his sword with lightning speed, imbuing it with sword energy. Clang 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 clang. Blue sparks flew as the finger forces that touched the sword blade were split or deflected by the strong energy. Having blocked all of this, the bamboo-hatted man hurriedly tried to send a rebounding sword force towards where Destruction Emperor was. However, clang. Suddenly closing in, Destruction Emperor blocked the sword blade that was about to release the rebounding sword force with the side of his hand and extended his fingers, imbued with strong energy, towards the bamboo-hatted man's face. Sensing he couldn't avoid it, the bamboo-hatted man aimed for Destruction Emperor's chin with his leg technique. At this, just as the bamboo-hatted man's foot was about to touch, Destruction Emperor retreated about 2 steps. The same was true for the bamboo-hatted man. However, as he couldn't completely avoid the finger technique imbued with strong energy, the bamboo hat he was wearing started to split. Looking at him, Destruction Emperor said, Mokgon no longer desires the society leader's body. Stop acting against that person's will. Crack. Before he could finish speaking, the split bamboo hat fell to the ground. The expressionless face of Destruction Emperor, upon seeing the face revealed by the fallen bamboo hat, showed ripples of emotion. Destruction Emperor looked at the bamboo-hatted man, or rather Ghost Blade, and said, What is that? The place Destruction Emperor pointed to with his hand was Ghost Blade's forehead. His forehead area was sunken inwards as if something had been there and then healed. Destruction Emperor's voice rose slightly. What happened to your eyes? Who knows? As soon as Ghost Blade's half-hearted answer fell, each of Destruction Emperor's fingers began to be enveloped in blue strong energy. Rumble. I faintly sensed demonic energy and I wondered why you weren't faithful to the command, so it was because of that. Before he could finish speaking, believing in striking first for victory, Ghost Blade suddenly thrust his sword towards Destruction Emperor's neck. Despite it being a lightning-fast sword strike, Destruction Emperor easily avoided the thrust by simply tilting his neck to the side, then instantly closed the distance and tried to drive his 5 fingers, dyed with strong energy, into Ghost Blade's abdomen. At that very moment, clang, Destruction Emperor's fingers, dyed with strong energy, were blocked by something. It was the form of an extremely transparent sword. This is... Flinch. Destruction Emperor hurriedly flew his body backward. Along with this, boom, something fell from the sky onto where he had been standing, shattering the ground and causing dust to rise in all directions from the impact. At this, Destruction Emperor, who had created some distance, lightly waved his hand. As the dust instantly cleared with the wind pressure, the being that had almost crushed him in an instant revealed itself. It was someone carrying 2 swords at their waist. Who on earth is this? Destruction Emperor's eyes filled with wariness at the extraordinary and fierce aura flowing from him. Then that person half turned his head and spoke. This one is mine. It was none other than Mok Jiang. Chapter 438, Ghost Blade 2. This one is mine. Ghost Blade couldn't help but be puzzled as he looked at Mok Jiang, who had suddenly fallen from the sky and helped him at the perfect moment. This one. Who on earth is he? His face is so beautiful that even a man would consider it handsome. But this face seems familiar somehow. It's strangely recognizable. As he was thinking this, Destruction Emperor, who had created some distance, formed the finger force on his 5 fingers into a round shape of strong energy and rotated it within his palm. Whirl whirl. In that state, Destruction Emperor opened his mouth. I don't know who you are, but this is not your business. If you leave now, I'll let it slide, but if you try to interfere with me, I won't forgive. Swoosh. Before he could finish speaking, a sharp sword energy aimed for his neck like lightning. Destruction Emperor flicked his palm, and one of the 5 rotating balls of strong energy bounced up and deflected the sword energy perfectly. Boom. Seeing this, a glint appeared in Mok Jiang's eyes. Such a small ball of strong energy containing finger force could deflect sword energy. How much energy must be condensed in it? Then Destruction Emperor spoke with an angry voice. How foolish to waste your chance. Pat. As Destruction Emperor swung his palm towards Mok Jiang, the remaining 4 balls of strong energy rushed towards him. At this clang, Mok Jiang drew the demonic sword Evil Commandment sword to block them directly, but the moment he blocked one ball, he felt an enormous weight and his body was pushed back. As he blocked the 3 incoming balls in succession, clang, 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 the sword blade, protected by death energy, bent as if it would break at any moment and shook violently, and he was pushed back half a step, then another half step due to the heavy force behind them. Rustle. Was it not just condensed energy? Mok Jiang realized that this was no ordinary strong energy. Swoosh. At that moment, Ghost Blade suddenly appeared at his side with ultra-high-speed movement comparable to form-changing teleportation and shouted towards Mok Jiang. His curved line-flicking finger divine technique is as versatile as sword control. Pack 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 pack. Clang 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 clang. 5 balls of strong energy suddenly flew towards Mok Jiang's side, but Ghost Blade elegantly deflected all of them by drawing a circular motion with his sword. It was a pear blossom grafting technique that had reached such an extraordinary level that it could be performed with a sword. Seeing this, Mok Jiang's eyes narrowed. Regardless, Ghost Blade said to Mok Jiang, I don't know who you are, but you'll be in trouble the moment he exerts his full power, so help me. Pat. With that, Ghost Blade sent a rebounding sword force towards Destruction Emperor. Destruction Emperor avoided the incoming rebounding sword force, snorted, then jumped up with his arms spread wide. Then small ball-shaped strong energies began to shoot out endlessly from his hands, quickly filling the surrounding area. At that moment, thud, Mok Jiang stepped forward with a true step and pulled his sword towards Destruction Emperor, then extended it. Then starting from the sword tip, sword energy began to swirl, and it spread out like a storm, enveloping the balls of strong energy that were trying to fill the area. This was the Pursuing Asia returning sword technique. This is. Ghost Blade frowned as if he recognized something while looking at Mok Jiang's sword sheath. Meanwhile, the balls of strong energy were swept up by the swirling sword energy, colliding with each other and exploding. Bang 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 bang. Kook. As explosions of strong energy occurred within the swirling sword energy, Destruction Emperor hurriedly tried to escape from this aftermath. Not missing this moment, Ghost Blade moved. Swoosh. He used his lightness technique for ultra-high-speed movement and approached behind Destruction Emperor, trying to cut his neck. But at that moment, Destruction Emperor struck down Ghost Blade's incoming sword with his fingertip. Then, boom. Something strange happened to Ghost Blade's sword. As soon as the fingertip touched it, Ghost Blade was forced to let go of the sword he was swinging. The fallen sword. Boom. Even though it hadn't fallen vertically with the blade down, it pierced into the ground. This seemed to be not because of the force applied to the sword, but rather as if the sword itself had become heavier. It would have been surprising, but as if he had somewhat predicted this, Ghost Blade, who had let go of his sword, rotated his body and kicked Destruction Emperor's neck with a spinning kick. Thud. Hit by the kick, Destruction Emperor was flung sideways, unable to properly control his body, and ended up kneeling on one knee. Thud. As his knee touched the ground, Destruction Emperor's expression turned fierce. How dare you to me? His pupils began to flicker with a yellow-brown color and his shoulders bulged. But at that very moment, as Mok Jaeongun extended his sword-formed fingers towards him, Destruction Emperor's body pierced through the ground due to the sharp energy that alerted all his senses. Boom boom boom. In that instant, an extremely transparent sword appeared and swept through the empty space where he had been. It was the invisible sword. Mok Jaeongun pointed his sword-formed fingers towards the ground where Destruction Emperor had pierced through. Then the invisible sword turned direction like a swimming fish and dove into the hole Destruction Emperor had made. He thought nothing could be faster than the invisible sword, but the problem was, the energy that was spreading out has disappeared. From the moment Destruction Emperor entered the ground, his energy could no longer be sensed. It was as if he had deliberately concealed his energy. At this, Mok Jaeongun, not wanting to lose him, raised another invisible sword, gripped it directly and plunged it into the ground. As soon as he did so, the ground shook from the sword energy of the invisible sword, then 8 cracks appeared and started to split. Crack crack crack. This was the 8 Immortals Sword Contest. 1. A sword technique he had learned from an unknown swordsman who pursued the ultimate sword at the Sword Valley, the holy land of swordsmanship. Rumble. Even if he had just imbued it with strong energy, its power would have been tremendous. But with the sword energy of the invisible sword added, the ground shook as if an earthquake had occurred, and even the layers of the split ground were exposed. Ha! Seeing this, Ghost Blade inwardly clicked his tongue. He had guessed that this was no ordinary strong person, but he didn't expect him to be a monster who had surpassed even the profound realm, called the Wall of Walls, the highest realm. But when he saw that the sword energy of the invisible sword was spreading towards the bamboo forest. Stop! Ghost Blade hurriedly shouted. Even at this, Mok Jaeongun didn't seem to intend to stop. So Ghost Blade flew his body and urgently raised sword energy with his sword-formed fingers to block the sword energy of the invisible sword that was trying to spread to the bamboo forest, drawing a line of strong energy towards the ground. Swoosh! The momentum of the sword energy created by Ghost Blade was also tremendous, but it was no match for the sword energy of the invisible sword, which was called the Sword Extreme. The energy of the sword force was completely oxidized by the sword energy of the invisible sword. Along with this, Ghost Blade's body was also pushed back. Rustle. Seeing this, a glint appeared in Mok Jaeongun's eyes. He didn't know what was there, but seeing Ghost Blade trying to block the sword energy of the invisible sword, it seemed there was something. In the end, Mok Jaeongun stopped the sword energy of the invisible sword. Drip. Thud. Then Ghost Blade, who had been continuously pushed back while resisting the sword energy of the invisible sword, seemed to have suffered internal injuries as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. If Mok Jaeongun hadn't stopped, he would have been in danger from even more severe internal injuries. Ghost Blade regulated his breathing and expelled the energy that had penetrated his body. Crack crack. The sword energy that flowed out through the soles of his feet split the ground. Ghost Blade inwardly clicked his tongue. It wasn't even a direct hit from the invisible sword, just the penetration of its sword energy, yet the pain was like fine, sharp fragments tearing through his blood vessels. At that moment, Mok Jaeongun approached with large strides and said, "Was protecting that bamboo forest more important than catching him? This forest is made up of very intricate formation patterns. If it's damaged even slightly, those patterns might change." Formation patterns? At this, Mok Jaeongun looked at the bamboo forest. At first glance from the outside it looked like just an ordinary bamboo forest, but when he fully opened his third eye, he could see certain energies circulating in a very complex pattern around the bamboo forest. Although he had some knowledge of formation patterns from the numerous books and methods at the Heaven and Earth Society, this was the first time he had seen a formation so complex and organically structured. What on earth is this? As he was wondering, Ghost Blade, having apparently resolved the energy in his body, stood up and said, "And he didn't fight properly, and if he's determined to hide underground, it's difficult for anyone to catch him." Swoosh. Turning his head from the bamboo forest, Mok Jaeongun said, "I thought you were comrades, but have you completely turned against each other?" At this question one of Ghost Blade's eyebrows raised. Although he had received help, he had been curious about the identity of this strangely unfamiliar person. So Ghost Blade spoke first. "Who are you that knows me?" Why did you help me? Help? Yes. You must have some purpose. Boom. Ghost Blade couldn't continue speaking. Mok Jae-eun, who had suddenly approached right in front of him, grabbed his collar and threw him backward, and was now aiming an invisible sword at his throat. It would have been bewildering, but Ghost Blade tried his best not to show it and opened his mouth. Are you an enemy? At his question, Mok Jae-eun answered with a chilling smile. Let's say so for now. For now. What does that mean? I've been looking forward to this moment very much. There's a lot I want to ask you, Ghost Blade. I don't know you exactly. You should at least tell me who you are. I have a grandfather who raised me. At that moment, Ghost Blade's expression, which had been maintaining composure, hardened. The strangely familiar face and the mention of a grandfather who raised him made him instantly realize who the person before him was. Avatar. As he called him Avatar, Mok Jae-eun spoke in an even colder voice. Indeed, there's quite a lot I need to ask you. Boom. It was in the middle of speaking. At that moment, someone appeared and threw a finger strike imbued with vast energy towards Mok Jae-eun. However, the finger strike was blocked by the blade of the invisible sword before it could even reach Mok Jae-eun. And, boom. Even though it caused a strong explosion, it couldn't inflict any damage. The one who threw the finger strike was none other than Chun Chu, the highest-ranking executive of the secret society. Chun Chu, with a somewhat agitated expression and trembling eyes, aimed her claw force at Mok Jae-eun again and said, "Get away from father. Father."